A young woman sits alone in a cold stone tower, surrounded by piles of straw that stretch to the ceiling. Her tears fall silently as she faces an impossible task: spin all this straw into gold by morning, or die. But when a strange little man appears through the shadows offering help, she has no idea she's about to make a deal that will cost her something far more precious than gold: her firstborn child. You think you know the story of Rumpelstiltskin? The Brothers Grimm made sure of that. But what if I told you that the real tale hiding beneath this children's story is far darker than you ever imagined? What if the spinning wheel, the golden thread, and even Rumpelstiltskin himself represent something much more sinister? Welcome to Sinister Stories. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment with your favorite dark fairy tale topic. I read every single one. Today we're tearing apart one of the most disturbing fairy tales ever written, and trust me, you'll never look at Rumpelstiltskin the same way again. The miller's boast wasn't just stupid. It was a death sentence wrapped in medieval superstition. When he claimed his daughter could spin straw into gold, he wasn't making an innocent exaggeration to impress the king. He was invoking something far more dangerous, something that medieval communities understood all too well. In 15th century Europe, the ability to transform base materials into precious metals wasn't seen as a cute fairy tale skill. It was alchemy, and alchemy was considered witchcraft. The miller essentially branded his own daughter as a witch, condemning her to a test that could only end in execution. But here's where it gets really dark. He knew exactly what he was doing. Historical records from the Brothers Grimm's original research reveal that similar stories appeared across Germanic tribes for centuries before being sanitized for children. In these earlier versions, the miller didn't stumble into his lie. He deliberately offered his daughter as payment for gambling debts, using the impossible task as a way to make her someone else's problem. The king's demand wasn't royal whimsy. It was a death sentence with a 24-hour delay. But why straw? Why gold? These weren't random choices. In pre-Christian Germanic cultures, straw represented the harvest, fertility, and the cycle of life and death. Gold symbolized the sun, divine power, and eternal life. The act of spinning straw into gold was literally asking someone to transform death into eternal life, a power that belonged only to gods or demons. The spinning wheel itself carries even darker symbolism. In Norse mythology, the three Norns spin the threads of fate, determining when each person will die. When the miller claimed his daughter could control the spinning wheel to create gold, he was essentially saying she could control death itself. This wasn't just blasphemy. It was a direct challenge to the natural order that medieval society believed would bring catastrophic consequences. The king's test wasn't about greed. It was about forcing a suspected witch to prove her supernatural abilities or die in the attempt. The straw-filled room wasn't a workplace. It was an execution chamber with a 24-hour timer. The story gets even more disturbing when you realize what Rumpelstiltskin's bargain really represents. His demand for the maiden's firstborn child isn't random. It's a direct reference to ancient fertility rituals that plagued Germanic cultures for over 1,000 years. Archaeological evidence from bog bodies across northern Europe reveals a horrifying practice. Communities would sacrifice their firstborn children to ensure good harvests, believing that innocent blood would guarantee the earth's fertility. The children weren't just killed, they were often buried with spinning tools, connecting the act of spinning to life, death, and rebirth. Rumpelstiltskin's appearance at the moment of the maiden's greatest despair mirrors these ancient rituals perfectly. He doesn't just offer magical help. He positions himself as a fertility god demanding the traditional payment. The 3 nights of spinning aren't about completing an impossible task. They're about completing a ritual sacrifice that spans from the maiden's desperation to her child's birth. Think about the timing. Rumpelstiltskin gives her exactly 1 year before claiming the child. This matches the agricultural cycle, from harvest to harvest, from one season of death and rebirth to the next. The child becomes the ultimate harvest, the final transformation of death into life that the spinning wheel represents. But here's what makes this even more sinister. In the original Germanic versions of this tale, The maiden doesn't win by guessing Rumpelstiltskin's name. She wins by offering him something even more valuable than her firstborn, her own life. The story was originally about a mother's ultimate sacrifice, choosing death to save her child from supernatural forces that demanded blood payment. The Brothers Grimm changed this ending because it was too dark for their collection, but the implications remain. Every spinning motion in the story represents another step toward inevitable sacrifice. The straw becoming gold isn't magic. It's the transformation of death into temporary life, with the understanding that eventually, the debt must be paid in blood. Medieval communities told this story as a warning about making bargains with forces beyond human understanding, especially when children's lives hung in the balance. What makes Rumpelstiltskin truly terrifying isn't his magical abilities. It's how accurately he represents medieval society's understanding of supernatural contracts. In the 15th and 16th centuries, people genuinely believed that demons and otherworldly entities regularly made deals with desperate humans, always demanding payment that exceeded the original benefit. The maiden situation perfectly mirrors documented cases from medieval witch trials. Women accused of witchcraft were often forced into impossible situations where supernatural help became their only option for survival. Historical records from the Holy Roman Empire show dozens of cases where women claimed mysterious figures helped them complete impossible tasks, only to demand payment that revealed the helper's demonic nature. But Rumpelstiltskin's bargain contains a crucial detail that medieval audiences would have recognized immediately. He doesn't ask for payment up front. He waits until after the maiden has gained everything she wanted. This delay was considered the hallmark of demonic contracts. The devil and his servants were believed to let their victims enjoy their rewards first, making the eventual payment even more devastating. The spinning wheel becomes a symbol of this trap. Each revolution represents time passing, each golden thread another step toward the inevitable reckoning. The maiden thinks she's solving her immediate problem, but she's actually spinning the rope for her own spiritual hanging. Medieval chroniclers documented similar patterns in real cases. A peasant woman would claim supernatural help during times of famine, successfully feeding her family through mysterious means. But within a year, something terrible would happen. A child would die, crops would fail, or the woman herself would be found dead under suspicious circumstances. The story warns that accepting supernatural help, no matter how desperately needed, creates debts that compound over time. The maiden trades her immediate death for her future child's life, thinking she's won a bargain. But Rumpelstiltskin was never offering salvation. He was offering a delayed execution with interest. This is why medieval parents told their children this story. Not to entertain them, but to teach them that some problems are better faced with honor and death than solved through supernatural intervention. The spinning wheel keeps turning, but eventually, every thread runs out. Rumpelstiltskin isn't just a magical helper. He's something far more ancient and terrifying. His name itself reveals his true nature when you break it down using medieval Germanic linguistics. Rumpel comes from the Old Germanic word meaning to wrinkle or to disturb, while Stiltskin refers to a wooden leg or walking stick. Combined, his name literally translates to the disturbed one who walks between worlds. This isn't coincidence. Medieval Germanic cultures believed in threshold guardians, supernatural entities that existed at the boundaries between life and death, human and spirit worlds. These beings appeared during moments of extreme crisis, offering solutions that always came with devastating costs. Rumpelstiltskin fits this description perfectly, appearing exactly when the maiden faces death and offering her a path to life that leads directly through spiritual destruction. His physical description in the original Grimm notes reveals even more disturbing details. He's described as having one leg longer than the other, dancing around his fire in a strange, uneven rhythm. This matches historical accounts of death spirits and psychopomps, entities responsible for guiding souls from life to death. The uneven gait represents his nature as a being caught between worlds, never fully existing in either realm. The fire he dances around isn't just dramatic flair. In pre-Christian Germanic beliefs, certain spirits maintained eternal fires that burned the threads of human fate. When people died, their life threads were consumed in these flames. Rumpelstiltskin's fire serves the same purpose. It's where he burns the contracts he makes with desperate mortals, literally consuming their spiritual essence. His ability to spin straw into gold takes on new meaning when you understand his true nature. He's not creating gold. He's transforming death into temporary life, borrowing time from the future and demanding payment when that borrowed time runs out. The golden thread represents stolen moments, each one requiring eventual repayment with interest. Medieval communities understood that entities like Rumpelstiltskin didn't offer genuine help. They offered delays, temporary reprieves that made the eventual reckoning even more devastating. The maiden thinks she's found salvation, but she's actually encountered the supernatural equivalent of a loan shark, who specializes in spiritual debt collection. The climax of Rumpelstiltskin hinges on the power of his true name. But this wasn't just a plot device. It reflected genuine medieval beliefs about the supernatural world. In Germanic and Celtic traditions, knowing a supernatural entity's true name gave you complete power over them, but learning that name often required sacrificing something precious in return. The maiden's discovery of Rumpelstiltskin's name comes through espionage, but the original versions make it clear this knowledge cost her dearly. She had to send servants into the deepest forests, where they risked their lives listening to supernatural creatures reveal secrets meant only for non-human ears. Several servants never returned from these missions, presumably claimed by the same forces they were spying on. But here's what makes this even more disturbing. Rumpelstiltskin wanted his name to be discovered. Entities like him operated under cosmic laws that required them to provide escape clauses in their contracts. But these escape routes were designed to be nearly impossible to find. By dancing around his fire and singing his name, he was technically fulfilling his obligation to offer the maiden a way out, while making it so dangerous that most people would never survive the attempt. The name itself carries power because it represents his true essence. Rumpelstiltskin isn't just what he's called, it's what he is. Medieval occultists believed that supernatural entities were literally composed of their names, that speaking the name correctly could unravel their entire existence. This is why he reacts so violently when the maiden speaks it. She's not just identifying him, she's attacking the very foundation of his being. His famous tantrum at the end, where he stamps his foot so hard he falls through the floor, isn't just anger. It's his essence being torn apart by the power of his own name used against him. In some versions, he literally tears himself in half, representing the complete destruction that comes when a supernatural entity's true nature is fully exposed and correctly named. Medieval parents taught their children to never reveal their own true names to strangers, believing that supernatural entities could use that knowledge to claim power over them. The story warns that names have power, but wielding that power always comes with terrible risks. Rumpelstiltskin represents the medieval world's deepest fear, that survival often required trading away pieces of your soul, and that these trades always favored supernatural entities who understood the true cost better than desperate humans ever could. The story wasn't entertainment for medieval audiences. It was a documentary about spiritual warfare. Historical records from medieval monasteries reveal dozens of similar cases where people claimed supernatural help during times of crisis. The pattern was always the same. Immediate relief followed by escalating demands that eventually consumed everything the person held dear. Church records describe families destroyed by mysterious bargains, children who vanished without explanation, and communities plagued by supernatural entities demanding ever-increasing payments. The maiden's final victory comes not through courage or cleverness, but through knowledge that cost other people their lives. This reflects medieval society's understanding that defeating supernatural evil required sacrifices from entire communities, not just individual heroes. The servants who died discovering Rumpelstiltskin's name were martyrs in a spiritual war that most people never realized they were fighting. But even her victory carries a dark undertone. By destroying Rumpelstiltskin, the maiden doesn't eliminate the supernatural threat. She simply ends one particular contract. Medieval theology taught that entities like him were symptoms of a larger spiritual corruption that could never be completely eliminated. Other supernatural predators would inevitably appear, targeting other desperate people with different but equally devastating bargains. The story's true horror lies in its inevitability. As long as people face impossible situations, supernatural entities will appear offering solutions that create even worse problems. The spinning wheel keeps turning in communities everywhere, with new victims accepting bargains they don't understand from entities they can't truly defeat. Medieval audiences understood that Rumpelstiltskin's destruction was temporary relief, not permanent victory. The forces he represented, desperation, supernatural predation, and the terrible cost of survival, would always return in new forms. The story served as both warning and training manual for a world where supernatural threats were considered daily realities, not fairy tale fantasies. Every thread spun, every bargain made, every name revealed, all part of an endless cycle where human desperation feeds supernatural appetites that can never be truly satisfied. So there you have it. The true darkness lurking beneath one of the world's most famous fairy tales. What started as a simple story about a girl who could spin straw into gold reveals itself as a medieval nightmare about child sacrifice, supernatural predators, and the terrible price of survival in a world where death lurked around every corner. The Brothers Grimm sanitized this tale for their collection, but they couldn't completely erase its horrifying origins. Every element, from the miller's deadly boast to Rumpelstiltskin's dancing fire, connects to real historical fears that plagued medieval communities for centuries. These weren't just stories people told for entertainment. They were survival guides for navigating a world where supernatural threats were considered as real as plague, famine, and war. The maiden's victory comes at a cost that modern readers often miss. Yes, she saves her child and destroys Rumpelstiltskin, but only after other people died to give her the knowledge she needed. Even in triumph, the story reminds us that defeating supernatural evil requires sacrifices from entire communities, and that victory is often temporary at best. Perhaps most disturbing of all is the story's central message, that desperation makes us vulnerable to predators who understand our weaknesses better than we do. The spinning wheel never stops turning. Somewhere, someone is always facing an impossible choice, and supernatural entities are always waiting to offer solutions that create even bigger problems. The next time you hear someone dismiss fairy tales as harmless children's stories, remember Rumpelstiltskin. Remember the ancient fears, the real historical practices, and the medieval communities who told these tales as warnings about forces that could destroy everything you hold dear. The darkness was always there, we just forgot how to see it. What do you think? Does knowing the real history behind Rumpelstiltskin change how you see the story? Have you noticed similar dark elements hiding in other fairy tales? Drop a comment below and let me know which sinister fairy tale secrets you want me to uncover next. If this deep dive into medieval nightmare fuel was your kind of content, make sure you subscribe to Sinister Stories and hit that notification bell. We're just getting started with the darkness hiding in plain sight. And remember, every fairy tale has secrets. The question is whether you're brave enough to learn what they really mean.